Okay, so these notes are over section 1.1, so go ahead to your next page of notes, and let's go ahead and write section 1.1, solving simple equations. Okay, and so what we need to know, first of all, what an equation is. An equation is something that has an equal sign. So algebraic expression with an equal sign. That turns it into an equation. That's going to be what's important, okay? So what we're going to do now is just we have to talk about how you solve them. And so I'm going to change colors because this is, well, I'll change colors for something else. So to solve equations, you have to do this is where I'm going to change colors. Inverse, ooh, and it's big. Inverse operation. So I could fit it there. Yep. And inverse is just a pretty fancy word for opposite. So in order to get rid of something, we're going to balance it out and we're going to do the opposite of it. Okay? All right, so now what I want you to do is, looking at your notes, I kind of want you to make this right here about that many lines. How many that is. And so there's a couple different things. We have addition. We have subtraction. And let's go down here. And then you have multiplication and division. Those are the four main operations. Now, I know that some of you might be able to solve equations just using math in your head, but I really want us to get used to processes, because you're going to get problems that will not work that simply, and you'll get decimals or fractions, and I want to make sure you know how to solve them. So when we have a problem here, let's just do a problem. So we're going to try and squeeze in two problems here. So I have x, well, that's not a good marker. So we have x plus 5 is 8. Now, a lot of you may look at this and you know how to solve this because you think, oh, what number plus 5 is 8? Well, that's just 3. And that's awesome if you could do that, but you will not be able to do that for the majority of problems we have this year. So you have to learn a process. So what I do is I draw my line down and I do the inverse. And so the inverse of addition, to get rid of an addition, is going to be subtract. So to get rid of a plus 5, let me make that a little smaller, I'm going to minus 5 on both sides. Now I always draw the line down because it's going to make things easier. Okay, so now here, 5 minus 5 is gone, and 8 minus 5 is 3. And so that's my answer. X is just 3. And again, I know that some of you were able to do that without having to do this step, but you need to know these steps. All right, now sometimes you're going to have things where it's on the other side. We still do the same thing. We draw the line down. And I need to get rid of this 3, and this is a positive 3 because there's nothing in front of it. And so the way I get rid of a positive 3 is I subtract 3 on both sides. 10 minus 3 is 7. Oops, let me go ahead and put this on this line here. And 3 minus 3, that's 0, so it's gone. So I'm left here. Now you can leave your answer like this, but if you like, you can also write it this way. You can flip the order. It's up to you. Okay, so now we're going to do subtraction. I'm going to move my face for a second. And so now the opposite of subtraction, well, it's addition because those are pairs. So if I see a subtraction sign or a negative, because a negative is just to subtract, I'm going to get rid of it by adding. So let's see, a minus 5 is negative 2. So again, draw your line down from the equal sign. I have to get rid of this minus 5, and the opposite of minus 5 is add 5. So I'm going to add 5 to both sides. 5 minus 5 is gone, so I'm left with a on the left. A negative 2 and a positive 5, those are different signs, so you subtract. And so 5 minus 2 is 3, and since the 5 is bigger, it keeps the positive. Okay. Let's look at one more. So again, sometimes your variable's on the other side, so let's write one that's like that. Again, draw your line down. I have to get rid of a negative 4. Remember, a negative is just a minus. So to get rid of a minus 4, I add 4 to both sides. 7 plus 4 is 11. A negative 4 and a positive 4 is gone. So I'm left with 11 equals a. But again, remember, you can switch it up and you can say a equals 11 if you like. So addition and subtraction are partners. Those are going to be how you get rid of things that if you see a plus sign, you're going to subtract it. If you see a minus sign, you're going to add it. All right. So that leaves multiplication and division, and they're the inverses. So the inverse of multiplication is division, and the inverse of division is multiplication. Multiplication. Almost couldn't spell it there for a second. Okay, so now multiplying, they're not going to write a multiplying sign. Majority of the time, what we're going to do is we're just going to put the number next to a letter. And what you have to remember is that when a number is next to a letter, this says 3 times x. So a lot of times I'll tell people to put the times sign there. So 3 times x. And the way you get rid of a times 3, oops, let's draw the line down. It's like what I said. The way I get rid of a times 3 is I divide. And the way that I write divide, I treat it as a fraction. And I'd like you to do this method because later on when we have harder problems, this method's going to be easier to see. So I'm going to divide the left by 3, and I'm going to divide the right by 3. 3 divided by 3 is just 1, so it crosses off. So on the left, I'm left with x, and 12 divided by 3 is 4. That's the answer. Now, just like above, you're going to have the x on the other side sometimes. So again, I just draw my line down, and you have to get the x by itself. So you look at this negative 5. Now, some of you might say, oh, the way you get rid of a negative 5 is by adding 5. That's correct if it's not multiplying, but look, this negative 5 is next to the x, so that means it's timesing the x. And so the way I get rid of a times negative 5 is I divide by negative 5. And so negative 15 divided by negative 5, those two negatives are going to cross out, and so it's a positive 3. Negative 5 divided by negative 5, that's a positive 1, so they're gone, and it's x. And just like the others, I'll accept your answer this way, or you can flip it so that x is on the left. Okay, so we have 2 more problems. So let's look at what divide by. So over here, you see I said divide is a fraction, and this is how you're also going to see the majority of divides. You're going to see them written as fractions. So this line says divide. And so the way you get rid of a divide is you multiply. So I'm going to multiply by negative 4. And multiplying goes on the top. So a negative 4 on the top and a negative 4 on the bottom, those cross themselves out. So I'm left with x on the left. And then on the right, 5 times negative 4. I have one negative, so I'm going to write the negative. And 5 times 4 is 20. So the answer is negative 20. Okay, last one. Let's do one that's backwards. And again, this says x divided by 2. And so the way you get rid of a divide by 2 is you times by 2. So timesing goes on the top. So negative 6 times 2 is a negative 12. And 2 on top and a 2 on the bottom crosses itself off. So it's x equals negative 12. Okay. Okay. And so you have 4 operations, but they're partners. Addition and subtraction is a partner. Multiplying and dividing are partners. So the way you get rid of them is doing the opposites of those. Now, the next thing you have to know is how do you check a solution? And that's an important step. So how do you check your work? A lot of times people in class will say, Ms. Razor, did I get this right? What I'd like you to be able to do is check it on your own, because this will help with homework and this will help with all of your algebra and any other math class you take, learning how to check your work. So I'm going to do the first problem we had up here. X plus 5 equals 8. X plus 5 equals 8. And we said X was 3. Well, all you do is you plug in X. So instead of an X, I'm going to plug in a 3 right here. So 3 plus 5 is 8. 3 plus 5 is 8, and 8 equals 8, so this works. So if you want to check your work to see if it's correct, you're going to plug in your X value. Let's put that. Okay. All right, the next thing I'm going to have you do is I'm going to have you do some problems. I'd like you to write them down and then try them out and then press play to see if you got them. Okay, so here are the first 4 problems. Please write them out. Remember to draw your lines down and see if you're able to solve them. Once you think you have it, press play. Okay, so for number 1, to get rid of a minus 4, you add 4 on both sides, and so X is 12. For this one, I didn't write it out yet because I want you to see this. What happens when I have 2 negatives touching? Well, if you remember, well, that's a thick marker. I need to make that a little thinner. If you remember what happens, 2 negatives touching become a plus. So really what I have now is X plus 2 is negative 3. And so now to get rid of a plus 2, I'm going to minus 2 on both sides. The 2's cross off. A negative 3 and a negative 2 is a negative 5. So be careful with these. We had not had an example, but you are going to see a lot of these. You got to remember to change it and then do the inverse. All right, for number 3, you should have gotten rid of a divide by 5 by timesing by 5. And so you got X is negative 10. For 4, to get rid of a plus 4, you should minus 4. And so a negative 15 and a negative 4 is a negative 19. Okay? All right, let's do the last 2 problems. Okay, so copy down 5 and 6. Remember to draw your lines down. When you think you have it, press play so you can check your work. Okay, so you should have recognized this was 3 times X. So to get rid of a times 3, I divide by 3. So negative 27 divided by 3 is negative 9. And again, you can keep the answer this way. You could also reverse it if you like to look at it with X on the left. All right, this one looks a little funny because we haven't used the divide by sign. There is a chance you're going to see that, so I just still want to make sure you're aware of it. To get rid of a divide by 2, I times by 2. And so negative 12 times 2 is a negative 24. And you can flip it around if you want. Okay? And so then what you do is if you want to check your work, for this one, I would do right here, I would, let's do red as checking. Negative, whoa, look at that. All my marker sizes are so big. To check it, I would do negative 10 divided by 5. And if that's negative 2, then it works. And it is negative 2. So that's how you check your work. Okay? So remember, if you have a plus, you're going to minus. If you have a minus, you're going to plus. And then if you have a times, you'll divide. And if you have a divide, you'll times.